And go live. Hey guys, welcome on this Valentine's Day. Now, of course, we don't do anything about Valentine's, right? Although maybe we do. But today we have a special episode of Digital Classroom. Now, Digital Classroom is always very special for us because Digital Classroom is our way to communicate with you guys over there. And this is because Digital Classroom is fully interactive. And it means that if you guys during the broadcast have any questions or remarks or stuff that you want me to explain more, feel free to ask in the chat. There's no problem at all for that. So we already have a few guys online. So I want to say hi to Paul, Hutakainen, Tom and Trevor. Good afternoon, everybody. So I hope the audio is right. As you can see, we're not in the studio, but we're at home. Now, if you might think like, hey, Frank looks a little bit weird or a little bit hyper or sometimes he slurs, that's absolutely correct because I have a gout attack. Now, if you know what gout is, you know how painful that can be. So they gave me a lot of pain medication and, well, I normally have this maybe once a year and it just coincidentally was this week. So, yeah, thank you so very much. And the pain medication makes me a little bit more thinking about what I say. So sorry for that. But I didn't want to cancel this episode because this one is going to be awesome. Now, we all know photography, right? And photography is our passion. Photography is, for a lot of people, our life. But most of all, and I put this online, social media this week, without photography, the world would be a much darker place. We would forget how those people look that we love if they're not there anymore. We would never give help to situations like in Haiti, because after those images, well, we all know the story, right? So photography is very powerful. But the only thing I ever show online is actually the stuff that I shoot now. How about if I show you stuff when I started? How about if I tell you how everything started? It's not the story of my life, but it's a little bit the story of how I became the photographer I am today and what I like and what I love. There are a lot of images, so we're going to go through the images pretty fast actually. But if you want to see something back, just do the rewind and just press pause and play again. But I would highly recommend doing that on the recording, so not on the live situation, of course, because maybe then you miss something. Trevor asks, can you speak about your UK workshop this year, please? Yes, Trevor. The UK workshop will be in a week. When will the UK workshop be? In June, after the Click Live event. So first we're going to go to the Click Live event. We're going to do their demos and workshops. So also book that one because that's going to be totally different. And then on that, I believe on the Friday or Saturday, we're going to do the Friday, and we already calls out Friday, we're going to do a full day workshop. So it's totally different from the Click event. So if you like my work and you want to do one of those workshops, I couldn't recommend which one because both are totally different. In the studio, we're going to do with a small group, maximum of 12 people, and we're going to do a whole range of lighting, styling, building a set, just creating some stuff that you can also do at home. And as always, we always try to make the workshops affordable for you guys. So we are thinking in the price range of about 250 euros. And I think for what you get, that's an absolute steal, especially because it's a small group with only 12 people. So I hope you can make that one, Trevor. And of course, everybody that goes to the workshop will have a fun day. I promise you guys that. Okay, so how about today? Well, when I started out with photography, believe it or not, it's twofold. It's the same with me playing guitar. I did it when I was younger, and then I had a big break of 17 years, and then I started playing again. With photography, it's a little bit similar. My parents and my grandparents all were into photography and video, so they had a lot of gear at home. And I remember being in the darkroom with my grandfather creating images. And I'm going to ask Anouk to sit a little bit more quiet because her chair is making a lot of noise. So I just loved being in the darkroom, developing images and seeing everything that somebody shot become real, for me real on a piece of paper. And somehow I didn't pick up photography as a profession. I did it as a hobby. And especially when Brian was born, of course, we started taking a lot of shots from our kid. But the first camera I actually got, believe it or not, was a Kodak camera. For a digital camera, only, I believe, 1.5 megapixel. We almost called it the UFO. And I just took it with me to Disneyland to photograph our honeymoon, because we had our honeymoon in Disneyland in 1997. After that, Brian, of course, was born, and we got a little bit more into photography, but only for hobby. And now watch this. One of the things that I love to do were animals. And you might wonder what kind of animals. Well, very simple. The cat of my parents, Enoch. Why not? Just shoot the cat. Or just a little bird. Now, these are the oldest images I could find back that were presentable. Let me put it that way. But I always loved birds, and especially birds or animals in motion. I didn't want anything that was standing still. It had to be in motion or flying or something weird. And this image was the first prize I won. And I wanted to include this for Valentine's Day, of course. It's still at my parents' bathroom, because every time when we go to the bathroom there, I see this image with first prize. In all honesty, the first prize was, I believe, a balloon. But I still love this image. And again, animals in motion, but also monkeys. We had a subscription to the Apenheul in Apeldoorn just to visit monkeys, or other animals, of course. But as you can see here, I always like that framing, trying to get a moment and not just shooting. And of course, sports. Our local soccer club was great to let me sit beside the lines, and we ended up being their main sponsor for, I believe, 14 years. So we got a lot of extra benefits. And well, sports, of course, you also have to get dirty, right? So this is the stuff that I love to shoot. Every weekend I was shooting sports, I was shooting animals, just for fun. And of course, at one point you start to use strobes, and this is a few years later, of course. But then we came back to our sports, and I shot a whole series with those soccer players with strobes, and they absolutely loved the end results. The other thing that I love to do, and this is again back, is grunge. Now you might ask, what is grunge? It's not the music style, it's the grungy look of something. And I know a lot of photographers are with me with this. If something looks old, a little bit broken down, that grungy look where you get all that detail, the rust, the peeled off paint, that's the part where you get excited. That's the part where you go like, oh, I really like this. So, of course, urbex locations. At that time, I didn't retouch anything. Everything was straight out of the camera. I was shooting raw, but I didn't use any additions like Lightroom or sharpening. These were the images that came out. So I really wanted to have something where I could see the light hitting it. And that was my whole point. I wanted to do something with light. And then at one point, you start to go to a photo club, right? And for me, that was the photo club Emmeloord. And there was this one guy, and he always shot trees. And I always like it. If you like what you do, right, you have to do it because that's your passion. But I didn't have anything with trees, you know. And another guy was shooting models. And in all honesty, I didn't have any feeling with models. Why the heck should I be shooting models, girls, in front of a camera? Go figure. What kind of insane profession is that, right? Shooting girls for money. No, I'm not going to do that. I love sports. I love animals. I don't want to do that. But then we had to choose a workshop. Go into the forest with the guy shooting trees or shooting models. And I knew one thing for sure. If I would go to the forest with the guy shooting trees, one of us wasn't coming back because it would frustrate the heck out of me. So I choose model photography. These are literally the first shots I ever took of a model. And in all honesty, I could tell you that something happened, but nothing. I really didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. Second week, included a prop, and I didn't like it at all. There was, however, one thing. The guy teaching the workshops used his stand with 3 little carves. One for the standing model, one for the sitting model, and another one, and he didn't remember. And I just said to him, like, what if the model is standing or what if the model is sitting? I get it. But what if the model is longer or shorter? He said, oh, I just angle the light. And I said, well, if you angle the light, you change the shadows. And he was going like, yeah, if you want to teach the workshop, I'm fine, I'm teaching this. Okay, I'm not going to say anything. But then I went online and I started looking at guys like, of course, Dean Collins. And he explained lighting in a totally different way. He explained lighting, not the way like this is a lighting setup that will happen. He explained lighting, understand lighting, and then start to play with lighting. And then you can do your job much easier. And I started going like, okay, so I invited that model over. Okay, let's go, gonna do the same setup, but let's change the backdrop just slightly. And at this point, I was just lowering the backdrop. I still wasn't happy. So I put a call out online for models. And I just felt like I want to master this. And when I have an image that I like, I will continue doing sports. And then I found this model. I was going like, okay, this is interesting. I love her expression. But as you can see, still the curtains in the back. And just for fun, this was our studio at the moment. So very, very small, very simple. And at one point I was just going like, what if I change the color of the backdrop? Or what if I go into Photoshop just a little bit? And I was just struggling with everything. I just didn't like it at all. And then I met Corinne. And Corinne was at school at that moment and wanted to be a model. And I wanted to be a photographer because at that point I was already going slightly to, maybe that model photography is fun, because in nature I have to wait for the sun, I have to wait for that moment. With model photography I can just place my lights and create something. And that creating, that was the main part. I didn't care who was in front of the camera, and I don't mean this in a negative way to the models, but it was more the story. So Corinne and of course some other people visited our studio, and what you can see is that I started to experiment way more with lighting from the back, adding colors. And at that point, of course, we also have a home theater company. So we brought one of the projectors from the home theater company and shot this. Now, these images are all from the first 2 years of model photography, actually almost from the first year. So I started experimenting also with more focus light, because what Dean Collins told me was a big softbox everybody can control. It's those smaller lights. If you control the smaller lights, those smaller lights will make you a better photographer. And of course, we all know Playboy, right? And I was trying to emulate a little bit of that look of Playboy. And I failed miserably, of course, but hey. Then we started going like, you know what, do a little bit more of smoke. And what you can see here is my character, or my, how do you say that, my whole way of being. I can't do one thing. If I only do one thing, and somebody told me like, you would be much more successful if you only focus on one kind of photography. So we love your vintage looks, only do those vintage looks. And I just looked at him and go like, do you want to kill me? Like, if I can't work with smoke, backlighting, full light, backlighting with only white softboxes, or make it dark, or go into cosplay, I'm going berserk. And he said, well, that's a shame, because you could be more successful. And I think maybe I don't want to be successful that much. Maybe I just want to create the images that I have in my mind. If I can live with that money-wise, I'm happy. So as you can see here, we were already experimenting with a lot of stuff, also including, as you can see here, Venetian blinds. The only problem was I didn't have a clue how to get those lines on the model's face. So I just opted to shoot it from the other side and create a little bit more overflow, so a little bit more of a glow in an image. It took me a few years to actually figure out that to get those lines on the face of the model, you have to use a hard light source, place it far away from the model, and of course far away from the Venetian blinds, and place your model very close to the Venetian blinds. Now, if I would have been smart and actually listened to Dean Collins, and also what I teach all my students now, look at the freaking shadows. Look at that image. You can see that the lines are there. They're only on her hands. And I wanted it on her face. But what do a lot of starting photographers do wrong, including myself? They only look at the total image. And when you only look at the total image, you miss the small details. You have to learn to start looking for the small details. Edge transfer. How fast is that shadow area going to bright? You have to look at your deepness of your shadows. How dark is that shadow? Is that really just a shadow, or is there scatter light? And that way you can recreate almost every image you see. But most of all, you understand how those images work. So if you want lines on your model's face and you want it on that distance, you better move that light away a lot more to the back, because then you will get those lines. But as you can see here, I failed miserably, of course. And then I had this moment where I got like, hey, you know what? I'm so bored with everything. I want to add props. But I didn't have any money for props. So, well, we created a box. A white box, nothing more. But man, it took me a year or two before I was done with that white box. Everybody we had in our studio had to pose against or with the white boxes. And I started to do more and more with those white boxes. I started to incorporate them into close-ups or into full shoots, making it part of. But I also started to doing a little bit more with clothing, as you can see here. Or including the strobes. Or just using backlights and using a silhouette. Later on you will see an image and you will immediately remember this one, I hope. I also started doing something with wide angles. This is all in the first 2 or 3 years of photography with models. So I started doing with wide angles. And the nice thing about a wide angle is it extends your view. In other words, a wide angle distorts. But if you know that distortion and you use it to your advantage, you can actually use that distortion to create something interesting, like you can see here. But there's something else. Look on the floor. As you can see on the floor, there's a reflection. And that's called plexiglass. Now, we always use a neutral plexiglass, and it means that if we place the plexiglass on white or on black or blue or whatever color, it will show that color. But the main advantage of plexiglass is that it will give you a nice reflection without the double halos from mirrors, and it will make a perfect white background because it reflects the light back up. I started adding a little bit of motion to our shots, and for the first time ever, this is the first image I could find where I'm using continuous lighting instead of strobes. Later on, of course, we started using a lot more continuous lighting and mixing that with strobes. Now today you're not going to see a lot of the new stuff. I really wanted to show you the older stuff because the new stuff you can find online, right? And I started to do a little bit more with storytelling. Like, for example, what if we shoot some images in our demo room for our home theater company? And in all honesty, the images aren't really great, but you can see where we're going slowly. And of course, the reflections on a white backdrop. Now I didn't have to use Photoshop anymore. I could just shoot it and the plexiglass would take care of it. Because before this shot, I was struggling to get that white backdrop. I could get the white backdrop by aiming 2 strobes on that backdrop, or sorry, on the floor. The only problem was it reflected back on the feet. So, or you had double shadows, or you had too much light on the feet. It just didn't work. By using plexiglass, I solved that whole problem and I got a nice reflection. And look at this, the plexiglass. Maybe I'm going to take it out of storage again and use it for the next set. You know what? In a week, this Saturday, we have the workshop Reflections, right?
Yeah.
We're going to use the plexiglass again this weekend in the workshop Reflections. Because I see this and I go like, I would love to revisit something like this so many years later. Oh, and we also have Models by Day from Toronto in. Hello, how are you? I hope you're doing fine and you're enjoying this episode. Same here. And now, as you can see here, I'm also playing a little bit around with lights behind the model, creating a little bit more of a color scheme. But then at one point, I started to go like, can I do better? Can I do more? And then we started to work together with makeup artists. And this was, of course, a big hit in your budget because a makeup artist is expensive. But the most hit that you actually take, that's time. Because where I was used to the model coming in, doing a quick makeup and then in front of the camera in about 10-20 minutes, it was now the model came in and you could watch a whole movie because 2 hours later the model was done. And then when you had to redo something, well, add another half an hour or 45 minutes. Shoots going from 10 till 12 went shoots from 9 till 5. In all honesty, in that period, the fun did go away a little bit. But the results were awesome. This is with basic makeup and this is okay, it's nice. But as soon as you start adding that real makeup, that's where I started to go like, oh, I really like this. This is going somewhere, this is different. But if you do makeup, well, you need models. And with models I had a problem. I was on a Dutch website called Dutch Heaven, and Dutch Heaven was awesome. We are now having a Facebook group actually with a Dutch Heaven reunion. So if you ever were a member of Dutch Heaven and you didn't know that, find the Facebook page where they have a reunion. We actually offered to do a reunion in our studio in this year, so that would be awesome, I think. Dutch Heaven was unique because it was a community, very much almost like a forum where you posted your images, but it was different from other forums. It was more like we all knew each other and it was very, very close. So you knew all the models, you know all the photographers, and of course there were new people that you didn't know, but you had chat rooms, you could talk with each other, you had portfolios. It was a very, very well thought out concept at that time. It lost from Hives, I think, in the Netherlands, which later, of course, lost from Facebook. And at that point, it all went to shit. But in all honesty, that Dutch Heaven period was great. Because at that point, you could start working together with models on a more regular basis. And you could actually find the models that you liked and the models could find your work. So if there are still sites out there today, I would highly recommend finding one and subscribing. And also Rolf is joining us. Hi Rolf, how are you? So it's just different with certain models. Now, we all know that painters had their muses, right? And muses are awesome because muses are people that click with you. And I think this is the most important thing I can tell you with photography. Up until now, I was struggling. I liked photography. I loved photography. I started to really like model photography. I saw Dean Collins. I saw a documentary about David LaChapelle. I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a second. But somehow, all the models that came in were nice. But I never had that feeling like, oh wow, I really love you. I would love to work more with you. They wanted to come back, and sometimes I let them come back, but the second time, it was like the first time was awesome, the second time was nothing, and the third time I didn't even want to retouch the images most of the time because it was all the same. And then I found my first muse, and that was actually Corinne. And she just came over after school and we just had so much fun with images. And through the years, we always worked together, I think for at least 5 or 6 years. And recently, if you look online, you can find those images. We recreated actually this shot or something a little bit more similar to this. As you can see here, with her, somehow I could do so many different things. She had so many different faces. We started experimenting with what if we do a commercial? How would it look? Of course, it looks ridiculous. But it was testing out what can you do and how can you retouch it. And because you're working with a fixed model, you can fail. And in all honesty, a little bit of a sidestep, I still believe that fail is a wrong term. Because every time that something doesn't work, you know how to not do it anymore. So you only fail when you stop experimenting. So maybe we would say it's an experiment that didn't work out. Better than fail, right? So I started experimenting with her. But also with Jamie, and as you can see here, Jamie was my posing model. Where Corinne had that beautiful look, and she was very versatile. Jamie was the model for me that could pose, that did the weird stuff. And then we had a model with expression. And this was awesome. I just loved working with her. I think she came back 5, 6, 7 times. And we did so many shoots. As you can see here, 1 million faces and totally, absolutely crazy. But hey, that's the fun part, right? If you have a model that's crazy, then you can do crazy stuff. But there was one thing missing. And that was, I think, maybe the final link for the models. And that was a model with a lot of experience. All the models that you see now are models that were just as me, starting out, just having fun, just being on a website. And it didn't really matter if you succeeded or not. There was not that stress. And at one point I felt I need somebody that gives me a little bit more stress, that kicks me in my ass to go a little bit further, that literally pushes me like, Frank, don't do this, that's too safe, do it the other way, because a client will never accept it. But how can you know how to work with clients if you never worked with clients and you didn't work with a model that worked with clients? Let me see. Models by Day, Corinne was my first favorite, loved her earrings way back then, and the underworld looking shot. Yes, Corinne had so many different looks. It's literally my first model where we did a lot of different stuff with. At Dutch Heaven there was this one model called Linda, and I didn't have the guts to email Linda because, well, all the models were like more hobbyists, and then there was this whole space of nothing, and there you had Linda, who was doing a lot of commercial work and also did catwalks, and well, she just looked like a fashion model that stepped right out of Vogue, and that's way out of my league. But Linda needed something. Linda needed a shot with a white box. Hey! Sounds familiar? White box? Yes, we had in our studio a white box. So we made a deal. Linda would get her image with a white box, and I would get a 1-hour lesson on how to work with models. Yeah, that went a little bit differently. When she came in, there was this immediate click, and we just loved working with each other. And we did a lot of photo shoots, and she learned me everything about how it is to be in front of the camera, because that was the part that I was missing in my whole experience. I knew how to set up my lighting, as you can see in those shots that you see here. At that point, my lighting, it wasn't sophisticated, it wasn't nice, it was still very rough around the edges. Not that I'm doing it great now, but I'm a little bit better now. And most of the shots at that time were still a little bit luck, but I was getting there like, okay, I visualized something, I was getting there for 70%. Nowadays I get there for 95%, but at that point it was still a lot of luck. The thing that I missed was understanding what a model feels in front of your camera. So I knew everything behind the camera, how to coach my model, how to tell my model to do something, and they did. But I never realized how that comes over to the model. And Linda was the model that didn't learn me anything about posing the model. That was okay. But she learned me about what you say to a model and how it resonates with that model and how you can push your model to do much, much better. So let's show you a few images of Linda. As you can see, we did a lot of different setups, and every image that I took of her, it just somehow, it just sparkles, it just bites, it's over the top or very simple. But everything worked. And yes, we had a lot of fun, as you can see here. Also, she was the first one where I shot on location. Before that, I never shot on location with a model. And she just said, let's go out, I have a girlfriend, and let's just go to a skate park and let's do some images. All these images are straight out of the camera, no strokes at that moment on location. Of course, a little bit of Photoshop. And she was the perfect model for me to experiment with more of the glamour look. So not going in the glamour like nudes or whatever, but going a little bit more like that 70s style, 60s, 50s, 40s, even more back like George Hurrell, hardcore. And in this case, as you can see here, I'm getting there, but I'm so far off at the moment. So yeah, that's the start. And then I think everything from all those models came together in one. Nadine. I was at the photography show, and that was in the Netherlands, professional imaging, and my model became violently ill in the term of she couldn't do anything at all anymore. And I was panicking because, hey, I was on a trade show. I was a no-name at that point. Literally nobody knew about me. I was just going there for the first time. I had the chance to do something on a booth. Oh my God, that was awesome. And I had no model. So I asked at Dutch Heaven who wants to help me, and Nadine responded immediately. It was like, I want to do this. And I was going like, okay, fine. And she came over, and I just looked at her images I saw online. I was going like, I don't know if this is going to work. I have no clue, but let's try it. On the trade show, she was awesome. And I gave him a choice at that point. You can get paid, or we can do a TFP shoot and you get prints. And Nadine immediately said, I want to do a TFP shoot. Time for prints. So she wanted to come over to our studio. Later on, she told me, I always wanted to work with you, and this was my chance because I didn't have the guts to email you. And I was just going like, why not? You know, always, and this is a tip for you guys, always email somebody. The worst thing that can happen is that they say no. So what? Nobody ever dropped dead from hearing no. So just email somebody if you want something. Don't be afraid. Nadine came back to our studio, and I just loved it because she did something that other models didn't do. She had expression. She had these great eyes, big eyes, and she knew exactly how to dress, and somehow she could read my mind about what I wanted to do. So let me show you some images of Nadine which we shot over the years. For example, who ever thought about using garbage bags as a dress? Or using just simple materials and chicken wire to make a dress? Look at this. Or just postage bags. Or how about building a whole robot out of just cardboard? Or just wearing wigs and just making sure that everything in the color is right. Look at the yellow and the red. They're on the same axis. They give you a beautiful combination. Or how about expression and just knowing how to pose with a balloon? Or using window shears and a little bit of wind. Here again, Christmas wrapping paper. Believe it or not, the whole outfit is Christmas wrapping paper. How do you think of something like that? Same here, Christmas wrapping paper. Balloons and garbage bags. Stuff from the Halloween store. Beautiful red dress isn't big enough. Let's make it bigger with 3 more dresses, 6 more pieces of cloth. And let's stand on something because the dress is too large. This is awesome. This is the kind of model that you want. Expression, not afraid to do something weird. This is what I highly recommend you guys to find. Find somebody that can literally go the distance with you and not limit you. Every time you feel you're being limited, just go back, zoom out and look at where am I limited. Is it technique? Okay, go follow a workshop or buy an instructional video or take a subscription on Kelby One, for example, with a lot of great instructional videos. Or visit a trade show like, for example, Click Live events when there are a lot of photographers teaching workshops. Or just email a photographer and ask your questions. But if you find out that your limitation is actually in your models, maybe hire a model. I paid for models in the past a lot of money because I wanted to do a lingerie shot and I was too nervous and I didn't want to do it with a model that I knew. So I hired a model. Huge mistake. Should have done it with a model that I knew because I totally lucked up. I still find it very difficult, but okay. And then at one point your telephone rings and you meet somebody that has a huge impact on your life. The first one was Scott Kelby, who literally brought me to America as the first European speaker for Kelby One. So that was a huge breakthrough because at that point, well, everybody recognized my name for, hey, you're at Kelby One. But for me, more important was Wiebe Suryadi. Now, Wiebe Suryadi in the Netherlands is very famous. He's a famous piano player. He also played in Carnegie Hall. And he's always in the news. He's a very, very nice guy. And he needed something for his home theater. And I'm not gonna tell you that story, but end of the story is that we became a little bit more acquainted. And at one point he said, hey, I have to do a photo shoot and I'm not feeling for it. And I said, you know, I'm doing photo shoots, right? He said, okay, hey Frank, come over and let's have lunch and let's do the photo shoot. And I was just going like, I hung up and I said to Enrique, oh my God, what did I do? I don't have a clue about how to shoot somebody like that. And the only thing Enrique said, just do it. Just act like he's your friend or whatever. And that's absolutely how you should do it. Famous people are just people. And if they behave differently, without you, they can't do the stuff, right? So everybody's equal. So also famous people, just act normal around them. And most of the time, they're awesome. So I started doing some photos. And these are really, really old. So I hope he doesn't mind that we show these. And this is my first photo shoot of him. And look at how terrible the images are and compare it to what you now see on my portfolio. A huge, huge difference. And I ended up on a CD and oh my, I was proud. This was my first CD. The weird thing is, and this is something that I want to give you guys. As soon as it became known that I was shooting Wiebe Suryadi, I got a lot of emails from models. Hey, do you want to work with me? And a lot of those models were the models from Dutch Heaven that didn't want to work with me before. I didn't change my photography. I didn't become a better photographer overnight. Why? And this is the moment where I actually said like, you know what, when I teach workshops or when I go to trade shows, I'm not going to show the stuff that I did with famous people. And if you want to know, just go to my portfolio, the website, and just look under the header of artists or musicians. We shot a lot of famous people. But you know the problem with shooting famous people? Is you can say, hey, I shot George Clooney's girlfriend, or hey, I shot Sean Webster, or hey, I shot Wiebe Suryadi, or Maria Bertrand, or whatever. Those images are okay, but they are never as great as the images I can take with a model. Because when you work with a model, there's a much relaxeder atmosphere and you can do much more. So why use those images? The only reason you use those images is to drop names. And I think if somebody wants to teach a workshop or wants to sell something, they should do it on the quality of their work and not on the persons they shot. I've seen work from great photographers shooting world famous people and I just couldn't get excited about one shot. I was going, this is crap, it just doesn't look right. And yeah, okay, it's George Clooney, so what? It looks terrible. And I've seen work from people where I didn't even know the models. The models looked normal, like they were just walking on the street. And just go to those images, those tell a story, those are awesome. Look at that lighting, look, wow, what creative, look at it. You see what I mean? Compare it to your work and not to names. Okay. And Richard Penning is coming in. Hey Richard, how are you? And guys, if you have in between any questions, just let me know. The first big shoot, the Golden Age. Now don't laugh. I was thinking about including this or not. And I decided, you know what, I'm just going to include it just for fun. So you can see how terrible it can be. This was the first time ever we went out. Now look at this, a building growing out of the head of the model. Too much shadow on the guy's face. Look at the clothing, it's awesome. But why didn't I shoot this on a wider aperture? Too little light on his face. The storytelling part is there, but it doesn't have any action. You see, there isn't any movement in the shots. These are okay. But look at this. Also here, above his head, too much information. I should have cropped that differently or placed him in a different location. Location, too much to the right. Should have taken it to the left. Tree growing out of his head. Every single image is terrible. This one I do like. This one is okay. This one is okay. Oh, by the way, over here, I was, I think, the only one who didn't have anything to drink. So somehow the posing became a lot better. Maybe that's a tip if you are stuck with posing of your model. Just feed them alcohol or something else. Maybe they loosen up. I don't know. I had to drive back, and the way back was okay. My first commercial assignment, terribly, terribly wrong. But we did it okay, and it was exactly what the client wanted, Buddha jeans. And the weird thing was that we still have Buddha jeans on our attic because they never picked it up. Because the moment we delivered the images, they went bankrupt. So this is an assignment I didn't even get paid for, but I still have the jeans. Am I happy with it? Let me just show you, right? And then compare it to the work we do now. Showing jeans, it isn't bad. I'll also compare to this, of course, this is, I think, 18, 20 years ago. Selective coloring, always fun. So, no. But at one point, you see a documentary about David LaChapelle, and you go like, wow, this is awesome. If you don't know David LaChapelle, find him online, David LaChapelle. Don't find Dave LaChapelle, because then you go like, hey Frank, I like stand-up comedy, but I don't know what this has to do with photography. David LaChapelle. He shot every famous person from Michael Jackson to Naomi Campbell, I don't know, everybody. And he had this beautiful way of styling. It was just absolutely awesome. For me, this changed literally everything. I started working with styling. Remember, this was before I met Nadine. So we have this divider between Nadine and the rest. So I'm going to be totally honest. This is everything I did myself. So no Nadine, nobody else. So I started to work with paper or small accessories, storytelling, of course using what you already have, and adding smoke. See the difference? This is boring, let's do it better. Wow, you learn on the spot. And just experimenting with looks or with rim lightings. Or maybe blue, David LaChapelle, rings a bell. Or start with more focused lighting, light fall off. Adding a little bit of notes before AE, of course. Not that it's great, but working with wide angles and screaming models. Or just tinting. I just wanted to experiment a little bit with tinting and tilting the horizon. This was my very much experimenting stage, but most of all working with styling and ideas and props and fitting it all together with expression. And well, look at this. Isn't that awesome how she just does this? Or this one. All these images were shot just by thinking about how should I approach a photo shoot. What fits together, which color schemes, how much fun can you have? Hey, we have a large tree leaf, let's put it in front of the face of the model, or let's add a cup and saucer in her hair, or let's make a funky professor. And by the way, I don't know if one of you guys online actually saw this one. This was the very, very first digital classroom. It wasn't called digital classroom at that point. We just had two beautiful setup, not computers, one to shoot tethered and one to stream to the internet. And the only thing we used was a webcam with a very, very long USB cable. The problem was you guys couldn't see the images coming in. So what I did, hold the camera and then very quickly run to the computer, look, 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 and then go back. And the fun part was that we had guys falling asleep during the makeup because we streamed the whole day. So we started the camera at 9 o'clock in the morning when the model came in, and we ended the live stream at 5 o'clock at night. And I was just talking with you guys, we had the chat room open. And this idea of the Nutty Professor actually was created by the chat. People just talking to each other and people just saying like, hey, what if this happened? What if that? Oh, can you try this? Can you try that? And that was so much fun. Models by Day said, I think I saw it. It could very well be. We did, I think, 4 or 5 of those live streams and then we just quit because, well, at that point, our upload speed was 0.5 if we had the wind. And I literally mean 0.5. So nowadays we all have 125, 125 or 220, 220. At that point, 0.5. I actually was invited. This is still a frustration to the end. I was invited with the first Google Plus conference. And to give you an idea, at Google Plus, I was ranked as the Dutch person with the highest ranking on Google Plus. DJ Chesto was under me. with his followers. So on Google Plus, we invested a lot of time to build that network. We were there from the start. So when they asked me to do a speech on Google Plus on the conference, I was going like, oh, I would be honored to do that with a lot of famous people. And then they did a test on our internet speed. And we needed at least 3 megabytes up, and we only had 0.5. So 10 minutes before I would go up, they cancelled everything and said, sorry, your internet is not fast enough. Imagine that disappointment. So we had a camera crew here, everything was set up, and it didn't work out. So nowadays, of course, now you're looking at us, and we can even stream in 4K if we want. So, oh my, everything's changed. But most of all, we had fun. We loved showing you guys behind the scenes, just like we do now. We'd love to share. And of course, we like to do a little bit more experimentations. So with styling, we started also to do a little bit more of the storytelling part, as you can see here, but also combining colors. And of course, starting to work with more close lighting. And then at one point I thought, you know what? I've had enough of it. I want to add some more, add motion. And we started something that I still love to do today. When people ask me like, hey Frank, why don't you shoot a lot with continuous lighting instead of strobes? You can't do this stuff with continuous lighting. It's impossible. A lot of people tell me it can be done. No, it can't be done. If you want to shoot a jumping model, you need a flash duration of at least 1/2000th of a second. So calculate that back to your shutter speed. You need a shutter speed of at least 1/2000th of a second. And when I say at least, I literally mean no slower. So 1/2000th of a second. But you also need a depth of field of about f8, f11. If you're really lucky, maybe f8, but definitely not below, because the model will jump forward, backwards, it will move a little bit, and you want everything razor sharp. There is no continuous light source on the market that can give me a 1/2000th of a second at f8 at ISO 800. There isn't any. So you can't do any freezing of motion with continuous lighting. Some people will say like, in the future it will come. It will never come, because it will burn your skin off, because it has to be so freaking bright. The only thing you can do is go outside and do it in the sun. But if you bring that into your studio, it will be very, very bright. So strobes. Strobes, but preferably strobes with a fast shutter speed, or sorry, flash duration. And then you can really freeze the models, as you can see here. Now, this was one of the reasons I switched from my gym-based strobes, which I used at that point, to the Elingroms, because Elingroms at that point were really, really fast with their flash durations. I've been with Elingrom, I think, for maybe over 10 or 15 years, and I still love them very, very much. They're great guys, great company, and also great strobes. No bad word about them. At one point, we switched over to Hensel for one simple reason: speed. At that point, the experts were so incredibly fast that I just wanted to try that out. And also with education, they gave me a better perspective. So I was going like, okay, let's switch over to Hensel. And Hensel, yeah, they stopped with their whole promotion of strobes for model photography. So we are not with Hensel anymore at the moment, of course. And we started, I think, end of last year with a brand new brand for Europe, and that's Giotto. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this in the flash duration part is, in the past, we really needed high-end strobes, so expensive strobes. One strobe, 1,000 euros. For almost my whole career, I've been working with very expensive strobes. And I did see all those Godox and hybrid strobes, Westcott, and all the cheaper ones. And I really like them, but they didn't freeze that motion the way that I wanted. And the last few years, Godox and of course also Giotto, Westcott, they now nail it. When I look at our Giotto strobes, they have a flash duration of between 1/1500 and 1/7000th of a second. In all honesty, it's usable at around 1/3000th of a second. The 7000th is almost on the lowest setting, which it's not on the lowest, by the way, then it's 1/40,000th, I believe, but 1/7000th is, I believe, on 1/4 power, which is not enough to do that depth of field. But hey, 3000 is more than enough. So nowadays we have strobes that are in the 200 to 500 euro range that can do the same thing as the strobes in the past. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not with the big brands anymore, but I'm actually supporting Giotto. Because let's be honest, for 1,000 euros you can buy 3 strobes, 3 stands, soft boxes, and you have a little bit of money left. So hey, I think that's, in our economy and with a lot of starting photographers, a much wiser choice than spending all your money on only one strobe instead of just spending more money on your backdrops, on your tethering cables and workshops, of course. Okay. Models by Day said, you had that medium format leaf shutter camera years ago. Yes, indeed. Throughout my whole career, I've shot with a few cameras. The first ones that were really serious were the Canons. And I think I started with the Canon 10D and ended with 5D Mark II or III. And then I got an offer to test out a Sony Alpha 99, which I really liked. And at that point, I also used the Fujis. And the Fujis were awesome. I just love the way that they have this really nice silver look and the aperture on the lens. I love old lenses and old cameras, so I really like that. And at that point I was still using the Leaf camera, so on a Mamiya RZ and 645 AF. And I think nowadays when I look back, I think the medium format camera still is my favorite camera, without any doubt. They have a certain look and a certain feel that you can't recreate with any other camera. However, that said, I'm shooting with the Sony A7R5, and oh my, that's a mighty fine camera. It's not cheap, but it has that three-dimensional look. It's really fast, the focus is dead on, and even with backlighting and using black diffusion filters, it still hits that focus every single time. So over the years, I think most used are Canon, Sony, and of course Leaf. Those three are, I think, the ones that I use most, and a little bit of Fuji. And I'm still looking at their medium format camera, which I really like. I didn't do a test with it, and I'm still open for that, but I don't know. I think the Leaf shutters and the Leaf backs were full frame 645s, and nowadays it's all crop. And I think if you go medium format, you should go for the full frame. So the Leaf or the Phase ones, if it's a full frame, if you go for the crop like the Hasselblads or the Fujis, they're bigger than a normal 35mm, but if you are used to that full frame, oh my god, that's just amazing. Okay, Otakana, I bought an Elinchrom HD500 just because you say it's good. Yes, the HD500 is awesome. You did a very, very wise choice. It's a great brand. And do remember, some people said like, hey, when I switched from Elinchrom to Hensel, hey, is Elinchrom bad? No, of course not. You have to realize that the decisions that we make are not often about brands, because the brands I support are great. We don't support brands that I don't support in terms of which I think the quality is bad. So the reason I switched from Elinchrom to Hensel has nothing to do with the quality, has nothing to do with the people. It had to do with the changing environment on trade shows. I was doing a lot of demos for Elinchrom and I wanted to do more education, and with Elinchrom I just couldn't do what I wanted to do. So we talked about it, we tried it out for a year, didn't work, and Hensel actually had other options. So as good friends with Elinchrom, we went to Hensel. And even during my Hensel workshops, I always told people, there are three brands that are okay and great and good. That's Elinchrom, that's Hensel, and in a certain way Profoto, although I think from those two, I would definitely recommend Elinchrom and Hensel. Profoto, in my opinion, is a little bit overpriced and doesn't really deliver on what they promise. Hensel and Elinchrom are, in my opinion, if you want something professional, those are the two brands you go to. And of course, if you start out and if you want something professional, hey, I shoot with it every day, Giotto. It's cheap, it's very fast, and hey, it does everything on a battery. It's at HSL, HSS, it does everything on manual, it does everything on remotes. Why not? It's the perfect solution. Let me see. Richard said, still with the Elinchrom ecosystem because of one of your videos years ago and is still happy with it. Yes, what I said, great system, no problem. The Skyports, awesome. That was the thing, by the way, that I really missed in the Hensels, the Skyport. Isn't that just genius, that you just turn on your remote and bzzzt, it just finds all your strobes and you can move it around? Freaking awesome. Of course, you don't really need it. But the first year I was working with Hensel, I was really going like, I'm missing this. And now with Giotto, I'm very happy that we have that remote control back where we can just change everything. Does that mean that the Hensels were worse? No, it's a different ecosystem. But that was one of the things that I did miss. I'm totally honest with you guys. Okay, let's continue. So I absolutely love doing that motion stuff, as you can see here. And dancers are, of course, amazing for that. But also in your photo shoots. And we did a lot of that motion stuff. And we still do. And these are just examples. Now, before we do this, let's show you a little bit of a video about Patreon, because I have to do a little bit of a drink, and I will be right back. Hey guys, and welcome to our studio in Emmeloord. My name is Frank Doorhoff, and today I want to talk to you guys about something that we get a lot of questions about. Hey Frank, how do you like this image? Hey Frank, what can I improve in this image? And of course, I love to help you guys out. But online, I mostly am limited to just saying, hey, I really like it, or continue like this, or change this. I can only do short images because, let's be honest, we get so many questions. So that's what actually got us thinking. And we started a Patreon. Now, what is a Patreon? Well, let me put it this way. Do you want an extensive photo critique every month? Do you want the bed phone, where you can directly contact me with any questions you have? Do you want to be a member of a group that's closed off on Facebook that have the same interest as you guys? That isn't about putting people down, but it's actually about helping people progress in their photography and retouching. Well, that's our Patreon. Now, by joining our Patreon, every month you can deliver 1 or 2 images. We're not that strict about it. And I will do a whole video. In that video, I will show you how I would do the retouching, what I would change about the shot, and I give you a whole lot of tips. That video is put online on a closed-off website. And it means that only the guys from Patreon can see that video and help you out. So I help you out, and the whole community helps you out. It's just an awesome way to learn. So, if you like what we do, of course the first thing you can do is subscribe to our channels, leave comments, and smash that like button because we really like it, and tell other people about it. But if you want to do a little bit more and help us out creating the awesome programs you enjoy, like Behind the Closed Doors, Digital Classroom, quite frankly, our upcoming podcast, Beyond Photography with the Doorhoffs, and a lot more, then please join our Patreon. I already know you're absolutely gonna love it. So head on over to the link below and start joining our awesome group on Patreon and get a lot of benefits. Thank you so very much for supporting our work. See you online. Okay, just heard from Anouk that there's also commercials in between from other stuff, and we didn't know that, so we're gonna turn that off for the next stream, so sorry for that. Okay, what do I love? What I love to do besides models? It sounds weird, right? Yeah, don't even go there. So, I love to find stories. I just want to show you very quickly some of my favorite shots I took over the years on the street. Because of course we travel a lot, so you see a lot of stuff on the streets. And as a photographer, I didn't want to leave my camera at the hotel. I always bring it with me. So let me just go through some of my favorite shots. And we're just going to do this fast, just to give you an idea. I love shooting people, but also reflections. Like the Apple Store in New York. Awesome if you shoot it under the stairs up. But also reflections in windows. This is not a double exposure. I saw it, I shot it. And I was very lucky. But also in the rain, just go out. If it's raining, that gives you another option. And of course you're going to be sick afterwards. So what? You have the shots, right? And I love to find humor, like We Kill Kodak film. Or It's Great to Be Terrible, you know it. But also that grungy look, like the Route 66. Or using wide angles. This is a point in, I believe it was Denmark or Sweden, where 3 countries come together. So we just walked up there and we just stood on a 3-country area. Isn't that awesome? The abandoned amusement parks. Always love that stuff. Or in, I believe this was Dubai, just go to the harbor and just shoot stuff that you normally don't see. Or just hike to hell. Yeah, literally, that's what they told me. That's on the sign, the road to hell. And trust me, it was the road to hell. It was very, very cold, but at the end you get the most beautiful images, so why not do it? And of course, on the streets, there's so much that you can see. Yes, holding this sign is unbelievably boring. This sign is also very funny. I beg for life, or analog books, or how about just a dark area, or people working, or just sitting on the street, or just go to weird places like the Heart Attack Grill. If you're ever in Vegas, I highly recommend going there. Or how about a security camera guard? Whatever, everybody has to have a job, right? Yep, I don't know what kind of job that is. And of course, after a hike, it's always great to take pictures. And yeah, or sit in the rain with Anouk. Just ask a police officer. Why not? They're just doing their work, right? Or a street preacher. I didn't ask him. I just shot him. Take a picture of him. And be at the right place. I knew that there was a sports event, and we heard that it was over and that the Rangers won. So I was going like, why not stand on a zebra or a crossroads? The nice thing about a crossroad is that nobody takes any notice of you because they want to get to the other side of the road. So just go there with your wide angle and just hold it up. Don't point it at people, just hold it up so nobody can see that you changed. And just keep shooting. Because if you shoot it at somebody, they'll go like, why are you shooting me? But if you just hold it up, people will just walk underneath it, and some people will literally go like this guy. Hey, there's a photographer. Woo, go. And you have a great shot. So, hey, I didn't ask. He did it. And this was not set up. This is the part, and I still remember the first wise words I got from Jay Mizell. Get the freaking strap off the table. Yeah, my strap was hanging over the table. But the second tip of advice I got from him was, it's so freaking difficult to get a picture when you don't have your freaking camera with you. He's from New York, so change freaking to, you know, the other word, right? We sometimes mispronounce fog as that word, if you know what I mean. We have to keep it kid-friendly. So this I saw, camera was on, take the shot, boom. If you have to take your camera out of your bag, it's over, it's done. You can't take that shot. You don't want to know how many of those shots I missed. On the streets with wide angles, totally different world. If you're bumped out with your street photography, take a wide angle or a fisheye and push yourself. If you're bumped out with that, take a 200mm. The whole street will look different. And I just love, again, humor. Or backlighting. People, markets, wide angles. And of course, again, humor. Terrible's McDonald's. Who thought of that, to put those two next to each other? Isn't that awesome? Last guest before Death Valley. Trust me, we only had about 1 liter left. And this was the last gas station in Las Vegas, in Death Valley. And there is no. So we went to a hotel and they first yanked my chain a little bit by going like, yeah, you have to stay here. The next tow truck will be here in, it's now March, right? May, June? And I was just going like, what? And she said, no, I'm just kidding. The gas station just moved about 1 block that way. 1 block? There were no blocks. It was all empty. But indeed, when you turned the corner, there was the gas station. So next time, just make sure that you have enough gas in your car if you go to Death Valley. This was our first time. After that, we went a lot more, and every time when I see a gas station, I now pump gas. Or trees. I just love those trees at San Francisco. But also, just when you sit down and you eat something, for example, at Starbucks, I just love to include that logo just a little bit. You don't have to include the whole logo, just a little bit. But most of all, the people there. And if you ask nicely, there's no problem. And sometimes you just shoot it. And the streets are just awesome. Every time we are in New York or any big city, I just love to go out there. This shot was done actually in Tenerife, and Glyn Dewis was there with us to teach workshops. And what you see, the red, is actually the braking lights of the bus. They were calling out at me like, can you please come into the bus? And I was going like, yeah, 1 moment. And I had the 30-second exposure, and I still had 30 seconds left on the exposure because I just started it, because I saw the red lights. And then I had to do a dark frame of 30 seconds. So I was going like, yeah, I'm coming. And at one point I just started to move towards the bus, you know, like moving. And then moving back because my camera was still there. Oh, sorry, I forgot the camera. And I was just going like, frick, I still have to get 30 seconds. They were going like, come on, we have to move. And finally, yeah, the dark frame was done and I just ran into the bus. But the image, was it worth it? Nah, not really. But hey, it's cool. And sometimes you just find amazing people around the road. And Bad Hotel. Now, in the Netherlands, this isn't funny. It's just Bad Hotel. So it's funny. But when I show this to Americans who are not Dutch-speaking people, they always go like, yeah, that's funny. And they go like, Bad Hotel. But most of all, what we love is just being there with each other. So Enoweek and I, here we are on top of a mountain in Norway. Somebody brought us all the way up to take pictures. And this is the point where you have to realize, and this is why we don't show any images from that viewpoint, because it wasn't possible. We climbed all the way up there. It took us about an hour. We were there, we were tired. This is the highest point on that mountain. It wasn't dangerous to climb there, but for us Dutch people, it was very dangerous and very tiring. And the moment you're standing there, there goes so much through your mind. It's just so mesmerizing. It's almost like the most beautiful thing you ever saw. The air is very, very nice. It's all is clean. You see the glacier in the back. It's just, nobody was there, by the way, because they were working on the road and you couldn't pass it. But our guide was actually family from the guys working on the road, so they let us pass. So there was nobody there, no tourists. It was totally empty. And at that point you just realize, like, photography is awesome, but this kind of stuff you can't capture. This is where my story comes from in seminars. Did it ever happen to you that you were on the most beautiful place in the world? You took your camera, you took a shot, and you knew this was a prize winner. It's the best shot in the world. It's God's creation at its best. And you come home and you just go like, where is that shot? And the only thing you find is that boring shot. And then you realize that's the one. This situation. It's just too beautiful to capture. What I could have done was go in wider, go in more zoomed. What I did was use the wide angle and just move it around. No. And the other thing that I love to do, and that's absolutely what I love to do, is this. This is Photoshop World a few years ago. And what you see here is the pinnacle of the best photographers in the world and the best teachers in the world. All hanging together, clinging together, telling stories. Stories about photography, stories about their passion for photography, their stories about how to proceed in photography and how to succeed in photography. That's priceless. And look at all those faces, all those laughters. Those people love their work. So if you say, what is your passion for photography? Without any doubt, it's that sharing of stories, that sharing of my knowledge and that inspiration. I just hope that you guys like it. So, model photography now. So what do we do now? It's very simple. Sorry, I'm not crying, by the way, but I have this annoying itch. So, model photography now. What is model photography now for me? Very simple. We still do a lot of location work. This is more modern stuff. So, you can do a location in your own backyard, which is great. But most of the time I'm forced to work in very, very tight locations. And somehow I just love it. I love working in tight spaces. The tighter it is, the better I perform somehow. So this was at the Rogue booth. We didn't even have a backdrop. So create something. Well, okay, there we go. This was shot on a Sony booth, I think 2 by 2 meters. So I am 2 meters. So imagine this, 1 Frank like this, 2 Frank like that, and 1 Frank like that. And you have to put in Frank, Nadine, and a whole lot of stuff, and you still have to take a picture. Yeah, a lot of people would go like, that's impossible. It is, but when you know what you do, you can have a lot of fun with it. Because we just started using the corners. And look at that. Some great images. And just to prove you guys that it was really at the Sony booth, there you go, the Sony booth. This was on another trade show, also very, very tight. This was maybe 1.5 meters by 2 meters. And I had no choice. I had to include the softbox because there was no way to not include the softbox for the very simple reason. The booth was way too small. So what I did is, why not let your model also hold the strobes and create this beautiful whole look of reflection and lens flares in a location. This was shot on a stage at Professional Imaging. This was shot on a location during a workshop for, I believe, Camera Express in the Netherlands. And we had this beautiful backdrop, but why not use that metal door? Because a white backdrop or a gray backdrop is just a white or gray backdrop. I've shot those many, many times in our own studio. So when I'm on location, I want something unique. So they had this whole setup on that side and I said, no, I want to do it over there. And they went like, yeah, but the whole show is in 10 minutes. I said, yeah, move all the chairs to the other side. And they just looked at me like, why? And then they saw all those, that's okay. They saw all that reflection coming back from that door and then they went like, okay, now we get it. That's indeed a very, very nice. Okay. As you can see here, the reflections are great. I have to check something on YouTube, what they say. Arrow YouTube is not receiving enough. Okay. I think it will go okay. Or at least I hope. Okay. Now this was shot on the trade show floor in the UK, I think Focus on Imaging a few years ago, and this was shot on the stage. So we started out with broad light, so hitting everything, and then I started going a little bit more to a vampire look, like Vampire Diaries or whatever, just making it more direct lighting. And I just love doing that. You can do something on a stage like that. A lot of the stuff that you do on stage, you hear a lot of photographers going like, yeah, I'm on a stage, so the images will be crap, but it's all about the technique. I've done many trade show demos and trade show floor stuff, and I can't get away with, yeah, it's a trade show, so it looks like crap, because, you know, you're doing it so often, you can't get away with it anymore. So you have to create images. And I sometimes tell people, like, my best work is actually done on trade shows, because you are forced. Look at this. This was shot, and I don't even remember that I shot it, in all honesty, because I think some people that are now watching will remember this one. Let me see. It lagged out for a second or a few minutes ago. Okay, so it will probably be okay. Now, when you visited the professional imaging a few years ago, you know I was very sick. At one point, even one of the other instructors took over my spot. But I wanted to do this one because Nadine did beautiful styling. So I was literally in bed. They pulled me out of bed, put me on the stage, and I was just going like, hello, how are you all doing? Because my voice was totally crap. I was full with medication. I didn't even, when I hold my camera, I was just shaking. So that's why strobes really helped. And I had 3 assistants on the stage. Normally I don't use any assistants, or I don't need any assistants. I still use them, but I don't really need them. In this case, I really needed them. In the end, I literally also did the retouching on stage of this shot. I came home. 1 week later, I woke up, felt a little bit better. And I went through the image and I was going like, did I shoot this one? And then it slowly came back. Now, this is not to blow my own trumpet. I hope that's the right expression. But it's just to tell you guys that experience is like muscle memory. If you play guitar or any other instrument, you know there are certain things that you can just play. So for example, a blues backing track, I don't even have to think about it. I can just play it, and it will not be great. It will not be John Mayer. I wish I could play like John Mayer, but it will not be great, but it will be something that will be passable as a blues solo. If you go to a progressive song, now I have to be 100% focused. So as long as you understand your lighting and you have a great model and you have assistants that help you, you can pull off stuff like this. It's muscle memory. It's literally getting everything together and then shooting it. So yeah, thanks to the assistants, we got a great shot because they did the smoke and they literally just pushed me around like, hey, stand here, press the shutter. Okay, there we go. I was so glad that that demo was over. Okay, and this is the same stuff, all shot on that same stage. Again, I don't have any recollection of these shots, but I do like them a lot. This was shot a few years later on the same stage, just having fun. And in this case, we had our model Rosa and Nadine literally on the stage while I was explaining. She took some plastic material, used a torch, and just melded it together and create stuff like this. It's just stunning, right? 10 minutes before, you only had a black cloth and nothing. And 10 minutes later, you have a shot with a little bit of water, with a beautiful outfit and a beautiful model. Model photography is awesome. You create something out of nothing. And of course, I love to work with extra lighting. So in this case, this is a workshop we did with Nadine, and we had a few minutes left. So we just asked people from the audience, okay, let's see if we can create something without strobes, without any artificial lighting. The only thing you have is your smartphone. So in one case, it will be the cheapest shot you ever took, because you don't use any lighting. On the other side, and that's something that somebody reminded me of, this is the most expensive shoot you ever do, because most smartphones are in the 1,000 euros region. So yeah, this is a very expensive shot, but on the other hand, it was only shot with smartphones. So one smartphone had an option to actually raise the output of the strobe. So we hold that one close to the model's face, just out of the frame, and for all the other ones we said just lower the output of your flashlight or just move a little bit to the back. Look to the viewfinder, and the nice thing about the Sonys is they have a what you see is what you get mode. So you can use the optical viewfinder mode, where you just see everything like with a normal optical viewfinder, or you can switch over to the what you see is what you get mode. In Canon it's called exposure compensation or belichtingscompensatie, and don't confuse that with the exposure EV, but it's like, what do you see outside? And by using that technique, I could literally just dial in this shot, just go down, just look on the display, okay, move a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit to the left, a little bit, and you just press and you have exactly the same shot, so no guesswork. So actually it's a little bit cheating, but hey, it's fun. In Dubai, teaching a workshop, also on location, and in Dubai you can get any car you want. But the most thing that I love to do on location is go to the special locations, like the Cavelli Club. And don't ever ask a waiter there what they spend on average on an evening. I believe it was $50,000 to $100,000. I don't believe I'm lying now, but $50,000 to $100,000. $50,000 to $100,000. It's insane. Now, I believe that was on the high evenings, but the club was amazing. Normally you can't go in there, but because, hey, we were shooting models for a workshop for Hall Photo Plus, we were allowed inside. And this is the ladies' restroom, actually. And we went in there, she said, you have to take a shot there. And I was going like, okay. Or just lay on the floor and just get the beautiful ceiling of the Cavelli Club in. And of course, this was my dream. I wanted to shoot an image in the desert. So we found, just a few hours before we had to leave, we found a desert marshal, and he took us down there, and we used actually 2 strobes with a mailman elastic. I don't know how to call it, an elastic band together, and then just shut it. And yeah, that was just enough to kill the sun there. It was still very, very bright. I just love that shot. The funny thing about this is that we actually found, I think, 2 years later, still red dust in our bags. Locations can also be on location, for example, in Ireland or in Scotland, and just using those very, very small areas where you can shoot, or maybe just larger areas. You have to be able to find those. Now, if you have a large area, that's easy because you just place your model there and you use the area. But it can also be hard because the area wins from your model. So that's why we use strobes, right? Model pops out, backdrop opens up. But sometimes you don't have that option because there's a lot of people walking there. It's just in a normal shopping area, but you still love that look, but you want to isolate it. Go down on the floor and shoot it up. Now in this case, of course, I break every rule there is because the model shouldn't be there. But because we're using strobes and because I'm using leading lines and that little bit of sunlight hitting it from the top, I did get away with it, and I actually like the shot, but it is breaking every single rule of composition, and in essence it's totally wrong. But hey, if wrong looks right, then it should be right. We even once rented out a whole country, a cowboy village in Belgium to shoot some images. Absolutely love this one. And castles, oh my, I was so fed up with castles at one point that we didn't do any castle workshops for years. But maybe in the future we will pick it up again, because let's be honest, look at those locations. Isn't it just awesome? Castles are difficult because the castle is so beautiful, so you have to be able to not let the castle win. And this is where I think strobes are so incredibly powerful, because they can literally just draw the attention of the viewer to the area where you want it. And wide angles to open up that area in the back. Or reflections, as you can see here. Now, in all honesty, be careful when you do stuff like this. When we go to the castles, which we know, we use walkie-talkies, so we can always call out for help. There are areas where we are allowed to change chairs. So we have to take out the original chair, put one back, and they look exactly the same, but there is a difference, they told us. And we have to just do it like this. So we have to pick it up, straight up, move it out. New one, straight up, put it down. So they have to be in exactly the same spot, and then the model can sit there. And for this shot, we had permission to put our feet on the table. If you're on a location, this is the advice I can give you. The first time we came on a location, we had to fight like crazy to do our workshop. You weren't allowed to use strobes. We weren't allowed to use smoke. We weren't allowed to do this. We weren't allowed to do this. We have to stand behind the lines. We had to do, and in the end, we were just visitors in a museum, taking some shots with natural light, and maybe in a corner use some strobes. We had a long talk with the owners or the guardians, and at one point they just decided, you know what, you have UV protected strobes, you know what you're doing. The smoke can be used in this area, we will just disconnect the fire alarm, and a lot of options opened up. And then as soon as they started figuring out like, hey, these guys are really nice and they do what they promise, they don't destroy anything. If we say don't go there, they don't go there, they keep people away. So this was one part I highly recommend you guys. When you go on a location, we always have this talk with our students, like before the workshop. We always make sure that the guardians of that castle or whatever, or the keepers, I don't know how to call it, the caretakers, they have to be in that room for that talk. And the reason is very simple. I don't want them to hear everything. What I want them to hear is the following. Hey guys, we are in a hotel or in a castle or in a museum. It doesn't matter where we are. There are a lot of expensive stuff here that's irreplaceable. I want all you guys to realize this. If we say you go back, you go back. You leave all your bags here. We don't want you to damage anything. And when we shoot on locations where it's not allowed, I'm there, my model is there, and one attendee. If I see somebody else coming over, you're out of the group. We have to have respect for the area. Do you want to say anything? And then I look at the caretaker and they just go like, no, that was everything we wanted to hear. It might seem very futile and a little bit like, hey Frank, why do you tell this? We are photographers. We know what we can do in a location. And we know that we're nice to the location. Those guys, they don't earn a lot of money from hosting workshops. It's an annoyance because there are a lot of people there shooting images. They have to be careful that nothing breaks down. If something breaks down, well, that's a lot of money, and then try to get it back from the photographers. So they're not really happy to see you. But if you make it happy for them and give them trust, they will literally ask you back. So in the end, we always have a bottle of wine for the guy that helps us out. And it's mostly the personnel that we give a lot of attention to, not the caretaker itself. The caretaker itself, we give money and we give a small print. But the guys that are working there, that's the guys that get the wine or that get a nice bonbon pack if it's a woman. Because those are the guys that literally can get you in and that are there every day. So make sure that you're a guest and not somebody that rents out and owns it. No, you're a guest. Very important. And then you can get away with a lot. The last time that we went in the museums, they actually took away all the cables and we could shoot inside the areas where a few years ago they said you can't even shoot there. And now we were just shooting on that location because they trust you. So build that trust and never break it. And grunge locations like urbex locations. Put a model there, it's awesome. Or studios like in New York, I use the windows to look out, and it's a pity that you didn't see anything of New York, but I just loved this look and started to do a little bit with color there. One of the speedlight demos we did for Rogue Expo Imaging in Santa Barbara. Or just use wide angles on a staircase. Locations are awesome. This was, I think, in one of the tours in England, in the UK, and we found this, I don't even know what it is, like a display case or something on the attic. And I just looked at it and I was like, it looks like freaking Doctor Who. So let's just place our model in there, use a lot of smoke and just create something. And is it the perfect shot? I wish I would have done stuff differently. But I think overall, I still like the shot a lot. And again, urbex locations. And find the proper model with the proper location, of course. This was shot at Photoshop World, and in all honesty, this wasn't my preferred way of shooting it. I could stay out maybe for 2 minutes, and then it was too hot, and we had 20 students, which in my opinion is a little bit too much. And the model, she was from Vegas, so she was used to it, but I really felt bad for her because it was so incredibly hot. But hey, if the model says, I'm willing to do it, and you make sure that she gets enough drink, and every 15 minutes I took her inside and gave her something to drink. As long as the model wants to do it and you're getting paid, yeah, just shoot it. But I try to do it as fast as possible. So if you don't get paid and everything is TFP, I think it's not wise to risk your health or of your models. These are paid models, they live there, and for me as a Dutch person, 45 degrees or 40 degrees is very hot. Maybe for them it's normal. But always think a little bit about location, but also about the people you work with. And this was shot during filming for an instructional video. The nice thing is this is a public location and we asked permission to shoot there. And they actually said, yeah, that's okay. The thing was there were a lot of people there. And as the moment I started shooting and started filming and explaining stuff, and then we was just going like, we have to hurry up. And I was going like, why? We don't bother anybody. And she said, look behind you. And I just looked behind me and there were a lot of people just waiting there very kindly, like going like, yeah, are you ready? If you were ready, we go. And I was just going like, wow. So they saw us filming and everybody just stood there waiting. And it gives a little bit of extra pressure. But look at the pictures. Normally there are a lot of people there. So maybe next time if you want to take a shot, take some extreme styling and everybody will just wait. Okay, this was also on a location And as you can see here, locations are just awesome, but sometimes you have to be smart. In this case, I just loved this whole shot, but the little rocking horse wasn't there. The problem was because we're using light from the back and I didn't bring any grids on this location, dumb. We had this huge white spot on the floor and I just freaking hated it. I didn't want that white spot on the floor. And whatever I did, I angled the light and it just looked totally wrong. I angled the light back, and the only shot that I really liked, also with that big lens flare in, that's not in Photoshop by the way, this was really the lens. It had to be with that white spot. Now, if there's something in your room, in your studio, whatever, that you find annoying, make it part of your photo. For example, if you have a big pole in your studio and that's one of the supporting poles and you can't take it out, don't bitch about it, paint it pure red and make it something of a set, and then just start doing stuff with it. In the old studio, we actually had a staircase going up, and we just put it all the way in the back and made it as small as possible and as steep as possible because I didn't want to lose any room. And at one point, there was one model I posed on it, and then we started a whole series with that staircase. It was the most annoying part of that studio for me. And half a year later, it became one of the sets. And then when we moved to the other studio, we actually said, you know what, I missed that staircase. In this case, what we did is that white spot, just threw a rocking horse in. And now it's part of the shot and you don't even see it as a white spot. Some people even say, ooh, I love how the model and the rocking horse are both lit. Yeah, that was purely a band-aid to do it. And in the end, hey, the band-aid works, right? Low angles, absolutely great. But also use your set. And again, this is all location work. Also, we shot on Aviodrome. That's where they have all the big planes. Of course, Times Square. And sometimes you are being asked by, for example, the, how do you call it? The DeLorean Club, if you are willing to shoot their open house. And of course you are, if you can bring a model. And of course, that has to be Nadine. I believe this was Mexico. And this is also a location, but I just include those shots to show you guys like the progress that you can do on location. And let's be honest, it's nice to see an elevator like this, but then the same elevator like this, and then like this. This was at Neil van Nieuwkerk studio in New Jersey or New York. And the first year I was there, I taught a workshop at Neil's studio, and I really liked the elevator, but we didn't have time for the elevator. So the year later I came back with Nadine actually as our model. So Nadine traveled with us for Photoshop World. And I said, I really want to shoot that elevator. And he said, why? I said, I just love it. And that's the thing. He's there every single day. He doesn't like that elevator anymore. He hates the elevator maybe. He thinks it's junk. But for me, it's new. And for me, it's awesome because I don't have an elevator like that, right? And then when you see it, how many different ways you can shoot it, that's just great, right? In this case, by the way, if you wonder, where's the red hue coming from? I use one strobe under my lens and just shoot it like this. And then just aim the red like that and you get this beautiful hue. Very simple trick. Sometimes you set up strobes, like in this shot. And the strobes were outside. And I really like the shot with strobes. But then I turned the strobes off and I was going like, whoop, leave the strobes off. This is way better. So always experiment with strobes and non-strobes. And that's the nice thing about locations. You sometimes have continuous lighting. And sometimes you need strobes, and sometimes you can combine the two. Same here, no strobes. I just love natural lighting in these cases. But here we use strobes, of course, to get created blue in the back and one light on our model. Sometimes you come on a location, bring your backdrops, and you bring a backdrop and you get something like this, and you just be creative, use your locations. It's way better to use your location and get unique shots and trigger your creativity than bring your famous backdrops that you all use and then create the same images that you normally do at home. When I come home from a workshop tour, I want to have unique images, unique locations. I don't want to have gray backdrops, which I can also do at home. This is our famous staircase. Or an airplane in the middle of the desert. And sometimes we incorporate the students. Sometimes when we have a group and we have a little bit of a certain atmosphere in the group, I try to do one shot that is actually a challenge where the group has to set up something in 10 minutes. And then after they've set it up and took the shot, I give myself 10 minutes to do it better or different. And sometimes when we have a more, it's not fun group because all the groups are fun, but there's certain atmosphere sometimes in the group, you know, and then it's very, very loose, and everybody's having actually a little bit too much fun. And then I decided to do something like this to just show the guys like, hey, okay, quiet now. Let's build a shot together. And this was actually stolen, I think, from Steve Vai. Steve Vai is a guitar player which I have a tremendous respect for. He's the guy who actually said failing is not an option, because every time you fail, you know how to not do it again. So failure is a wrong word. It's the road to success. You only fail when you stop. And he's a very gifted musician, according to me and a lot of other people. He's the best guitar player in the world. And one of the things that he does, he has so much confidence in his capabilities that during live shows he calls out people from the crowd and just line them up, and his whole band is there, and they're great musicians. You should watch it. It's called Build a Song. And what he said is just come over, okay, hum something, and somebody will go like He said okay, and the drums will start playing that, and then somebody else come in, okay, hum something, and bass line, and before you know it, in 10 minutes time they play a song that could be published on a record. It's awesome. They have bridges in, they have solos, they have melody lines, and they do it right on the spot. And I thought, you know what? I can't do that with music, but you can do it with photography. So why not incorporate every time somebody... So first we have the model. Let's incorporate the strip light. People go like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, now let's incorporate somebody who gives me a lens. Okay, now somebody, of course, has to take a camera, and somebody has to shoot from here, and somebody has to give her a balloon. No, now it's getting too busy. Let's get my assistant in, like, okay, now we have to stop. The thing is, you don't only learn about lighting your model, but now you also have to light everybody in that set. But you don't want those people to jump out. You want those people to be subdued in the set, but they still have to be there. This is pretty tricky to do. The fun part is, in the end result, it's a picture where everybody's in the picture. So it's the perfect group shot for your workshop. If you teach workshops, try something like this. It's a huge load of fun, and you will find out it's actually pretty difficult to get right. This was from one of the first or second videos we did for Kelby One. Also on location using a ballet school. And of course smoke. Smoke is always awesome. This was for Kelby One when they visited the Netherlands. So of course we went to Amsterdam and our local junkyard. This was my first video for Kelby One, also on location and freezing motion. And in the end, where does it all boil down? Because you saw a lot of stuff that I like to do. A lot of stuff that I did. But when you mix and match, do you get a style? Maybe. This is a friend of mine. He wanted to do a shot like Freddie Mercury. So hi Chaim, if you're watching, I still love this shot. But in the end, you can do stuff with paint, with reflections and backlighting, or bring your pets, or use lighting, or aim your lighting. But I think in the end, for me, it's the storytelling. And when I started working with Corinne, there was this little bit of storytelling there. When I started to work with expressions, it got a little bit better. When I met Nadine, she had all that three stuff together, and somehow we always say to each other, 1 and 1 is 2, but when we work together, it's 1 and 1 is 4. Because somehow we accelerate each other. It's like boiling, and then you just throw in more oil on the fire. It just keeps going. When I start shooting cosplayers, I think that's the point where I got that last click. And even when you look at images with Nadine we did after the cosplayers, they are different. Because with cosplayers, it's the costumes, they're awesome. So the first intention is to pull back. Okay, these costumes are awesome. Just like Nadine, the costumes are awesome. Just shoot the costumes and relax. With the cosplayers, I found out like, hey, if I shoot Van Helsing and Dracula, I can't have them standing next to each other, like going, hey friend, how are you? Are you looking forward to Christmas? Yeah, fine, Christmas. No, they have to fight to the death. So they have to express that. They have to power that. And you can't do it like this. No, you have to do it like this. You have to have power. You have to have that fire in your eyes. This is a totally different way of coaching your models. And when I started doing this and started shouting at my models like, hey, come on, you have to do this. Come on, staker. You feel like a total jerk, or you feel a little bit bad. But then you see the results and they go like, yeah, I'm going to stake her. And then you get images like this. And let's be honest, this is so awesome. Look at that expression. And before that, they were just standing next to each other like, hey, friends. This is the part where you don't just shoot images anymore. You create characters, you create atmosphere, you create passion. And I think for Valentine's Day, what is your passion of photography? Storytelling. And look at the differences. This is more modern stuff. Here we are not afraid to compete with the lighting. No, we aim at that lighting. So how do you do something like this? Very simple. Use a lens baby, because those are very, very prone to lens flare. Put one blue spot on the top. Take a red gel, just put it over that blue spot, and that's the one that is hitting the model. And then just place your fingers like this and just open it up like Mr. Spock. And that line of light, that's actually the lens flare that you see there. So if I wouldn't have my hand there, that whole image would be blue. By placing my hand like this, you can literally create that kind of effect. But also here, you see we're starting to incorporate more and more smoke, aimed lighting, storytelling, more styling, extreme angles, but there's always something there. The suitcases. I wouldn't have done that a few years ago. Or somebody out of the box with that expression and that weird head. Or using light bulbs as my only light source. And again, of course, motion. Freezing motion. Again, the trick with the Dr. Spock lens flare. And this is actually shot with triple exposures. So in one shot, so you just open up the shutter, the strobe goes off, the model turns, and then the strobe goes off 2 or 3 more times. And those are of course a little bit softer. And you use very bright modeling lights to let in all the swirls. So it's actually one shot, toof, 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 and then the rest is actually a cumulative, oplopend in Dutch. So it adds up, and then you get images like this. I absolutely love those shots. The only thing is the timing for the model is very difficult, because it's like, okay, 1, 2, 3, and then at 3 you have to end, because that's the final flash. So Nadine actually nailed it almost every time. If your model isn't that well with aiming, that perfect moment, I hope I pronounced it correctly, a tip is to do it reversed. So what I do is I will press, the first strobe will go off, the model turns, and then at the end she has to be at the final strobe, because that's the big one. If she can't do that, start with the big one and let her turn the other way around. And it is a little bit weird, but it looks different. But sometimes it works. But with Nadine it's actually perfect, because she did it the right way around. It's also cool to see what you can do with lighting if lighting isn't there. So this is with the backlighting, this is without. Totally different look. And I think nowadays, why not use also UV lighting? Or smoke and a projector. So we're now using, for example, the Westcott Lindsay Adler projector in the back, and a lot of smoke. So you can create beautiful stuff. And again, that drama in the shots, I just love that. Final shots from the staircase. And one of the things that I absolutely love to do, and I hope you also see that in my work, is combining old-fashioned photographer, Harcourt, George Horrell. As you can see here, I'm not too far away, I'm still not there, and that's frustrating for me, because I see those shots, I know what they're doing, and somehow, maybe it's the models, maybe it's the styling, maybe it's something else, but I still, for my feeling, am a little bit off of that really old-fashioned look. But hey, we're still trying it. And this is when everything actually comes together. Styling by Nadine during a workshop where the students also did a lot of stuff. And this one we call the Dragon Lady. And I think this is a shot where everything comes together. It's great lighting, we work with colors, we work with smoke. The styling is by Nadine, we have a great model. But most of all, what I found the most important thing is this shot was done with a whole group. So the idea, the whole execution, everything that was worked on further, the lighting setup, this was a group effort. This is not a Frank Doroff shot. It is, but it's made by everybody in equal part, and that's what I love about that shot. Again, that classic look, going a little bit more for color. And of course I love robots. But overall, I hope what you guys experienced today is that I just love photography. But most of all, I love teaching photography. I love telling you guys about photography. Now, very quickly, we want to thank, of course, a few people. And one of the companies is BenQ, of course. They've been with us for many, many years. Great monitors, hardware calibratable. And if you are in the market for a new monitor, email us if you're in the European Union, because we have a 10% discount on new BenQ monitors. And so email us for that. It's limited, but just drop us an email. For lighting, we always use the color checkers from Calibrite. They just give you the perfect starting point, including, of course, light meters. We are the distributor in Europe for Qlik backdrops. Now, in this seminar, you didn't see a lot of the Qlik backdrops for the very simple reason. I wanted to show you guys how I started, where it all started, how it opened up. I think if you want to look the new material, you can just look it online on my website. So there's a lot of stuff there. Let me show you that very quickly. So you just go over here. And there you can see the portfolio and everything. During the photo shoots, we of course use something to tether to our iPad Pro, and that's Cascable. For tethering, we're using IQ Wire cables. We are also the distributor for IQ Wire. And a lot of the modifiers we use on location are actually Rogue products, and we also use them in the studio now. It's an American company. We've been working with them, I think, for over 15 years. And they have very cool solutions that are for the creative photographer. They don't hold you back. It's just great stuff, and it just works, especially the magnetic system and the Frank Doro flash bender. They're awesome. Okay, let me see if there are any questions. I just got a new color checker to replace the really old one. Love them, I think I learned from you. Yeah, Models by Day, I'm very interesting to hear from you the difference between if you use the old color checker and a new one. Now, what a lot of people don't realize, the color checkers are awesome, and you really need them to start out photography even, because all colors have three coordinates, the X, the Y, and the big Y, so hue, saturation, and luminance. Your light meter takes care of the luminance of your color, but the color checker has those three coordinates stored in software. So you shoot a color checker, you use the software, and the software actually finds out, hey, these are the squares, it should be this, it's that. So let's create a correction file, which they called an ICC or DCP profile. The thing is, of course, that color checker, if you throw cola over it or anything else, it's unusable. But what a lot of people don't realize is that those patches will deteriorate over time. I've seen people complaining that color checkers are totally waste of money and it doesn't work. And it's terrible, and even with the color checker, the colors are much worse. And then I asked them, like, hey, when did you buy a color checker? Oh, I bought one of the first when they hit the market. I said, that's 10 years ago. Yeah, you still have it? Yeah, I still have it. I said, buy a new one. I said, no, they don't work anymore, and it's terrible. And I said, buy a new one. With one of my students, actually, I gave him one of mine to test out, and he bought a new one. Every, I believe it's 3 or 4 years, you have to do a check with a new one to see if it's still right. Now, in the past, there were these little stickers, I believe Spider had them, where you could see the deterioration of your color checker, and I think that was a genius solution. Now, Calibrite is the brand that I use, and Calibrite doesn't have that sticker, but in all honesty, the Calibrites, after about 2 years, 2.5 years, they are still very, very accurate. Now, I always close them. So in other words, I don't use them outside, open up a lot. So when we go outside, we have them close up in my pocket. And the moment I have to do the color checker shot, I open it up, take the shot, close it down again, put it in my pocket. I see a lot of people going outside, opening up the color checker, leaving it in the sun, and then, oh yeah, I have to take a shot of the color checker. Don't do that. UV lighting will kill those patches. But if you use them in the studio, maybe every 3 or 4 years, just change them over. Models by Day, yes, I talked with one of the experts of the company. She told me stuff out them. Yes, that's true. You have to change them over time. Paul, do you prepare for your teamed photo shoots with a mood board or storyboard? That's a difficult question. Let me put it this way. I highly advise you to do that. And I mean, I highly advise you to do it. I'm just changing my size a little bit. There we go. I don't, in all honesty. Sometimes with Nadine we do, because Nadine has a vintage store, and then it's easy to know, hey, I need something like this. Like with the zebra shoot. We recently did a zebra shoot, and that went great, and we loved the outcome, but that was styled. So literally I told Nadine, hey, we have this chair, we have this stuff on the floor, we have a stuff on the back, do you have something in your store? So at that point we don't really work with a storyboard or a mood board, but we do know what we want to do. When I work with workshop and I don't have fixed models, so I don't have models that I know, then I work with a mood board. And I try to do that with Pinterest, because otherwise if a model drops out or you get another makeup artist, you have to do everything over and over again. And when you do it with Pinterest, it's just there. But I think it's been years that I've used Pinterest. So normally we now work with models that we know, because I hit my nose a little bit too much with models that didn't show up or that show up, and I was going like, oh my God, to have to work with that. We need Photoshop 2030 to fix that, you know? So yeah, I want to give people the best possible experience. And that means that nowadays we often work with our own models or with models that we know by photographers that we know online, and where we actually know that they will show up and they will perform. So normally, no, not literally with mood boards. But that doesn't mean that we don't have the idea, right? So if I tell Nadine, oh, I want something with a robot in the 50s style, for Nadine, that's already a mood board in their mind. And some people work like that. I have students that I literally have to draw everything out. And I have to draw out like, okay, I want this. I want a headpiece like that. I want that. And I have students where I just go like, think about Greta Garbo on an Etsy style. And they will go like, oh yeah, so you want something like this? That's it. And you go. Now, the reason I am a little bit hesitant and I do a lot of time with this question is twofold. Using a mood board is very important, but using a mood board can also be very limiting, because it's on the mood board. It's on the mood board, look there. And if you don't have a mood board and you just say 50s robot, you can always go from 50s robot to 60s rock band with a robot. You know what I mean? So you're a little bit more flexible. So the mood board for us is more like, hey, I want to do a robot in the 50s style, instead of having a mood board with all kinds of pictures of robots, because then I'm feeling a little bit forced, like I have to do this. But hey, that's me. And in all honesty, I have a huge problem with creativity, I think, because when I look at, let's say, a remote control, this doesn't really give you inspiration, right? My problem is it does. Because if I shoot it like this and I hold it up, I can do little ballet dancers on top of it. Maybe if I do it like this, I can make a beam come out of it. Maybe I can use it as a weapon, or maybe I can place a model behind a big screen TV where she sees herself, or maybe somebody stepping. You see where I'm going just by a remote control? I think if you have trouble with getting your ideas by using simple tools like a remote control or whatever, I think then a mood board is absolutely awesome, because that's the part where you hold yourself fixed, like, okay, don't go there, we have this mood board, focus. With me, if I focus, I think actually I'm better like this instead of like this. If I'm like this, I can go anywhere, and I have the models which can go anywhere with styling like Nadine. And when I go like this, it's more like straight on, I get the shot, and I'm hardly ever satisfied with it. Okay. Rolf Kief said, wow, Frank, petje af, what a story, respect, sorry you have to go. Rolf, thank you so very much, that's so kind. We have way more stories, but hey, the time is up, so I don't want to keep you guys too long. Now, if there are any questions more in the chat? No? Okay, what I highly recommend you guys is check out our portfolio, because all the images you saw today were shot literally when I started out photography, and a few, of course, later. But most of the images were really old material. It's not a material where I'm still proud of, but I just wanted to show you how it started and where that passion is. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you do, please tell other people about our channel so we can grow. And of course, give a like, and see you again next time. Now for the next digital classroom, of course, we're going to do a live shoot again. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet, but I think we're going to see some cool and interesting props and maybe some smoke. Or what do you want to see? Just email me what you want to see in the next digital classroom, and we will literally do that. Now in the future, we're also going to do a digital classroom again with all your questions. If you have questions, email them to us. We're always open. We always save those images or those questions, and we're going to do that in the next digital classroom. Okay. Thanks, Frank. Very helpful. Okay, that was awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you so very much, guys, and see you again next time. Bye-bye.